the eve of this album release, and do you get nervous around this time, like presenting your music to a new audience?
I think for me, there's something about, definitely I've been seeing a couple of things online now at this point, where there's extreme positives, extreme negatives, just as you would have with any album that comes out. And I think that's the part that kind of like, I have to make an effort to like distance myself from.
Yeah.
Because you put so much work into something, and I just personally could be real sensitive to it if I don't like make an effort to
Let it get to you.
not be attached to it. Like that.
Well, I like this format for a listening party because it's kind of like we're in a gallery space for audio and for video.
Yeah, real quick, like a shout out to the Sonos folks. Can we give them a round of applause real quick? And you can turn these monitors down too. These don't need to be quite so loud. This was a lot of fun. Like I said, the folks that helped put this together are actually here in the house with us tonight, and I hadn't seen it, but it did look great. So good job, guys.
Yeah, and there's also something about the communal experience of listening and connecting and enjoying an album, even though everyone was tweeting and on their cell phone.
I appreciate the fact that, I think there was there was less people doing that here than at our shows, which is interesting. I wrote something on my blog about it. When I was a kid, we would leave high school and go, we'd get some lunch, we'd go to the record store on Tuesdays, and we'd buy the new album by whoever, all of our favorite artists, and we'd sit in the car, and if it was a cassette or CD, we'd play it, we'd go back, we'd rewind, whatever. And I remember everything from specifically Wu-Tang's first record, and Alice in Chains, and Nine Inch Nails, and Tribe Called Quest. And I remember going and sitting in the car with my friends and listening to those records, and it was not what we do today. I mean, and I'm not saying it's not a commentary on downloading or leaks or whatever. It's just the fact that usually these days people experience it on their own, by themselves, on their little laptop speakers, which are terrible, and they don't make a decision to enjoy it. And if you just take one extra step, and decide to have more fun with it, then you really get a lot more out of it. And it doesn't matter what album it is, even if it is something where you do want to listen to it by yourself, you can just decide to do more with it and really have fun. And I know the folks from Sonos, that's part of their mission statement, so that's why this is kind of a good fit, I think, for this folks.
You also made a mixtape. I don't know if people realize, but as kind of a warm-up to presenting the album, you put together a bunch of tracks which were played earlier in the evening. And I don't know if people noticed, but I find it very telling. It's a statement because as you put those songs together, what's coming after, so you're kind of getting people ready.
Yeah.
And looking at that playlist, I want to ask you about that a little bit. Because there are some things that...
This is so random, I love it.
There's some things that I would expect. There's a Nas track, and then there's some old school hip-hop, there's Ice-T and Two Live Crew, but also some unexpected stuff. And I wanted to kind of call you out on the unexpected stuff specifically.
Love it.
There's a couple tracks that are a collection of prison blues folk music.
Yeah.
That you included.
So, in making Living Things, one of the parts of the process that was defining for the record was that specifically Brad and I got really into folk, and not 60s, not the Dylan era folk, but early 1900s, really raw stuff. And it was they have one microphone in a room with a bunch of dudes who are just singing the song that they've sung a million times. Some of them were prison songs. One of the records was an Alabama prison inmates singing their work songs. And these, for us, those songs happen at a time before when people think of songs today, if you go on Twitter, it's hilarious because everybody knows everything about making a song. They're so knowledgeable. I wish I should just go ask them how to make a song. And they'll tell you how a song is supposed to be set up. They'll tell you about the hook and the verse and how long, 16 bars, rapping, etc., what BPM, they'll tell you what it's supposed to be. The songs we were listening to they predated all of that stuff. Like there was no such thing as a hook, there was no verse, it was just songs in the round and people just singing from the soul. And that was the stuff that for us was like a palate cleanser. It was like we got into this record thinking like, God, we could erase everything we know about what a song is supposed to be and start there. And all of a sudden you start mashing that up with a super current, like, cutting-edge electronic kind of sound, and that's how a song like Skin to Bone or Roads Untraveled, like, that's where those really came from.
Well, also, when you're talking about music that is so old and is part of an oral tradition, there's probably some secrets in that music that you can kind of draw some inspiration from. There's a reason why these songs are handed down, why they're so profound, why they're kind of the connective tissue for people. You know?
Yeah, and for me, I don't know, I tried to, like, I didn't do a lot of digging, and I won't profess to be any kind of like expert on folk music at all. Like, I really I've just cracked the surface on it, and I don't know a lot about it. But for me, the stuff that in any kind of music really, like, I get a lot out of is when I can listen to it multiple times and I realize that there's layers of meaning that you can take out of it that are not just the intended. You know what I mean? Like, even with I was just listening to, have you heard the Chromatics did a cover of Neil Young's Into the Black? So this song is like it's almost like a standard at this point. But I love that original, but there's something about this girl singing it with this modern indie kind of flavor that brings a whole, I don't even know if they intended, like, it's something that's so magical you can't even intend it, but like there's something about the moment that you record it, you put the right instruments together, and there's something else there that brings a different level of meaning. And that's something that we just, I think especially having in the last couple of records, like, we really just kind of, you can't manufacture that, you gotta just happen upon it, and when you hear it, you gotta make sure you don't screw it up.
There's a song in the album called Castle of Glass, which, I don't know if this is a stretch, but I hear a folk influence in there. I could be way off. So feel free to just throw me under the bus.
I think when it starts off, like, take me down to the river bend, you can probably
Maybe that's it, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, like, originally one of the first sounds in the song was originally an acoustic guitar. And we worked on that for, like, Mark's walking away. Mark, you've probably filmed us working on the Castle of Glass acoustic guitar rewrite. Like, he's probably got, like, 6 hours of footage of us trying out different ideas, like, we could replace it with this, we could replace it with that. And those are all efforts to, like, kind of beef up, like, the flavor of the song, as opposed to you hear the acoustic guitar and you automatically think one thing.
By the way, we do have the album at the ready in case you want to reference anything. We don't have to. But back to your mixtape real quick. There's some current, more indie electronic pop stuff that I was impressed you included. Sandy Gold, Mike Snow, Beach House is in there. I was curious also on this artist, which I didn't know about, and I actually played this morning on KCRW. I got it from you, man. Wild Bell, Keep You?
Yeah.
I did not know this.
Like, I don't know if it's like baritone sax or whatever is going on. That is like.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever heard that instrument used that way was on 45 Kings. What's the name of that record? You know the.
It's 900 numbers.
Yeah. The Ed Lover dance was the used to use it for that. And when I hear like a modern, like, indie pop song, like, using that instrument and like killing it, it's like that's the type of thing that gets me excited. You know what I mean? Like somebody who, that's just a weird thing. It's like a weird moment. It's a weird sound that I feel like. Sometimes when people think of a band like ours making an album, they imagine like people like plotting out like what's the most going to be like the most successful sound. Like we envision a thing and then we write it by the numbers. That ends up being the song. For us, it's the complete opposite. It's like we start with an empty canvas. It's like a walkabout. Like we just start making something, and it could change a million times. It could change, like, even up until the point where we're mastering the record. We'll change stuff. We'll change the song, the actual song, and that comes with like. I think for us, we're just trying to like make the best thing we can and not be too fixated on what the world needs or what the right thing to do by whatever standards are going to be. We're just looking at the song and saying, how can we make this better at all times?
Well, that's one thing I really like about your band, is that it feels like you're always pushing, progressing, moving forward as a band. And I'm sure that's challenging sometimes, just because if you're successful for one thing, you know, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable place by pushing forward.
Yeah, I think I've always gotten a real chuckle out of on the last couple records. There would be people, again on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, but I mean like people online, who would say that we changed, that we started making songs that sounded different from the first two records and they sounded more pop, and that we were doing things that were more mainstream because they weren't as loud. It's like we abandoned the guitar and all of a sudden it was more pop, or the distorted Mesa Boogie, whatever the thing is. And anybody that knows how to make those songs knows the first thing about making a song like that, knows that it's very like, once you've got that formula, it's plug and play, like you're done, you know? You can just keep making that thing over and over again. And the real like moment of truth for us was to say, we know that is acceptable, that like a lot of people like that thing, and then we're gonna go ahead and hit mute and put it away and not do it at all. And that was like, that's the opposite of like commercial. That's the opposite of like what we could have done to sell records, and we were fucking terrified. We really were at a certain point. We were just sitting there looking at the record and going like, well, a lot of people are not gonna like this, but we like it. So we're just gonna stand behind it and do our thing, and people will come around.
If you reflect on, it's my one? Okay, check.
That one
Okay, there we go.
That doesn't have the amazing little copper.